Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
After years of working in a small company, I finally landed a huge contract with a Japanese firm. The catch? They wanted me to come to Tokyo for 3 months to help integrate their systems. Despite not speaking a word of Japanese beyond arigato, I jumped at the opportunity. The company set me up in this nice business hotel in downtown Tokyo. It wasn't anything super fancy, but it was comfortable and clean. Most importantly, the staff spoke enough English to help me get by. Well, most of them did anyway. Everything was going smoothly for the first few weeks. I had my routine down, work during the day, explore the city in the evening, and enjoy the amazing hotel breakfast before heading out each morning. The breakfast was seriously the highlight of my day. They had this perfect mix of Western and Japanese dishes that made every morning feel special. One morning I woke up earlier than usual and realized I couldn't remember if breakfast started at 6 a.m. or 6:30 a.m. Usually I'd just head down around 7 a.m., but I had an early meeting that day and needed to know the exact time. I went down to the front desk, phone in hand, ready to use Google Translate like I had been doing throughout my stay. There were 2 clerks at the desk. One was helping another guest, and the other was typing away at his computer. I walked up to the free clerk and showed him my phone with the translated text asking about breakfast time. The clerk read my phone and reached for his own phone that was charging on a nearby table. But before he could grab it, the other clerk, let's call her Karen because she definitely earned that title, shot him this nasty look. The first clerk's hand froze mid-air like he'd just touched an electric fence. Karen snapped something sharp in Japanese. The first clerk quickly sat back down looking uncomfortable. He started typing something on his computer, then got up to grab something from the printer. A moment later, he handed me a printout of a Google Translate web page with the words, "It starts at 6 a.m. on it. I was about to thank him and leave when Karen started speaking loudly in Japanese, clearly upset about something. The first clerk kept his head down, but I could see his face turning red. I asked if everything was okay. Karen responded in broken English, stating that phones weren't allowed during work, claiming it was company policy. I questioned this, pointing out that he was just trying to help with translation. Karen got more agitated, insisting that phones were not allowed and that they must use the computer, declaring it was unprofessional otherwise. At this point, I was getting irritated. The poor clerk was just trying to help me, and here was this woman making a huge scene over nothing. I challenged her logic, questioning how it could be more professional to waste time and paper by logging into a computer, using Google Translate, and printing out a simple message instead of taking 10 seconds to use a phone. Karen responded by saying something in Japanese to the first clerk, who looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. That's when I noticed the hotel manager walking through the lobby. I'd seen him several times during my stay, and he always made a point to greet the long-term guests in English. He approached and asked if everything was all right. I explained the situation, describing how the clerk had tried to help me with phone translation before Karen stopped him and forced him to waste time and paper printing out a translation instead. I mentioned that phone translation had never been an issue during my weeks of staying there. The manager's expression shifted from friendly to concerned. He turned to Karen and asked if she had implemented this policy. Karen, subtly less confident, mumbled about phones being unprofessional. The manager explained that they encourage staff to help guests in the most efficient way possible, and that using translation apps on phones was perfectly acceptable, especially with international guests. Karen tried to defend herself by bringing up the company image, but the manager shut that down quickly. He explained that their company image was built on customer service, not on making simple tasks unnecessarily complicated. He then apologized to me for any inconvenience and assured me that we could continue using whatever translation method worked best. The first clerk visibly relaxed, and Karen looked like she'd just swallowed a lemon. The manager asked the first clerk to come to his office later, and I had a feeling it wasn't for a scolding, but rather to hear about any other policies Karen had been enforcing. After that day, I noticed Karen was significantly quieter at the front desk, and the other staff seemed more relaxed when using their phones to help guests with translations. I've been a personal security specialist for 15 years now, and I've dealt with all sorts of situations, from overzealous fans to actual threats. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened last Tuesday at the downtown mall. I was on duty protecting a well-known tech entrepreneur during a casual shopping trip. My client wanted to check out some new electronics store that had just opened. Standard procedure. I kept a respectful distance while maintaining clear sight lines. Just another professional in a suit as far as most people were concerned. For context, I take pride in my appearance when I'm on duty. Pressed black suit, crisp white shirt, tie perfectly straight. The earpiece and sunglasses aren't just for show, they're essential tools of the trade. Now yes, I carry concealed, but only because it's part of the job and I'm fully licensed. Everything was going smoothly until I heard someone behind me. She was yelling, trying to get my attention while claiming she knew exactly what I was. I didn't respond. In my line of work, the best response is usually no response. But she wasn't having it. She kept yelling, accusing me of being one of the men in black. I turned slightly, keeping my client in my peripheral vision. The woman was probably in her 50s with that signature, "I want to speak to your manager" haircut. I politely asked her to step back, but that only made her more agitated. She mockingly responded that she knew I wanted her to step back just so I could use my light device to erase her memory again, and shouted that it wouldn't work this time. She was getting louder, attracting attention. My client had noticed and was watching the situation unfold while pretending to browse smartphones. I tried explaining that I was just a private security professional doing my job. She scoffed at this, saying that's what we always say before erasing her memories. She bragged about keeping track and writing everything down right after it happens, insisting she knew what we did. She was digging through her oversized purse now. Years of training had taught me to be very wary of people reaching into bags. I commanded her to keep her hands where I could see them, but she just screamed back that she wasn't falling for it anymore. That's when she pulled out the pepper spray. Mall shoppers started screaming and backing away. She taunted me, challenging me to see how I'd like being attacked, and whether my alien technology could handle pepper spray. She aimed the pepper spray at my face, but we trained for this sort of thing. I immediately turned my head away and raised my arm to shield my eyes. She pressed the button, but the spray missed completely. What happened next was pure muscle memory. 15 years of training kicked in. I moved forward, using her extended arm's momentum against her. One quick move, and I had her arm locked behind her back. Another gentle but firm push, and she was face down on the floor, completely immobilized. I called out for someone to get mall security. She started screaming about assault and declaring herself a sovereign citizen, yelling that I had no right to touch her. Mall security arrived within minutes, and the police weren't far behind. It turns out this wasn't her first rodeo. She'd been involved in the same stuff at other locations, harassing men in suits and claiming they were secret agents trying to erase her memories. She had a history of mental health issues and had stopped taking her medication. The police found 3 more cans of pepper spray in her purse, along with a notebook full of evidence about men in black encounters. According to her writings, any man in a black suit with sunglasses was part of a vast conspiracy to keep her from remembering the truth. My client was impressed with how I handled the situation. He even gave me a bonus, saying he appreciated that I managed to subdue her without causing any harm. The police charged her with attempted assault, and this time, the judge ordered mandatory psychiatric evaluation and treatment. The funny thing is, in all my years of doing this job, I've had people mistake me for Secret Service, FBI, and even a mob enforcer. But Men in Black? That was definitely a first. Though I have to admit, sometimes when I'm standing there in my suit and shades, I do feel a bit like Agent K, just without the memory-erasing neuralizer. I've been working in the catering business for nearly a decade now, managing one of the most prestigious catering services in our town. We're known for our wedding cakes and delicate pastries, which require extremely careful handling during delivery. That's why I personally handpicked our delivery drivers, ensuring they met our exacting standards. One of our drivers, who has been with us for 5 years, has an impeccable record. They've never had a single incident, complaint, or even a minor scratch on any delivery. If anything, they're almost too careful, taking longer routes just to avoid bumpy roads that might disturb our delicate cargo. This incident happened last year, and I've been waiting to share it until everything was fully resolved. It was during that awkward period between winter and spring when the roads were finally clear of ice, but everyone still seemed to be driving with winter anxiety. I was handling dispatch that day when I received a call from our delivery driver. They reported that someone had brake checked them on the main road into town before speeding away. Fortunately, this happened after they completed their delivery, so no precious cargo was at risk. I started taking down all the usual information: license plate, vehicle description, location, standard procedure for any road rage incident. Before I could even finish processing the driver's report, our main office line started ringing. Little did I know I was about to deal with the brake checkers themselves. I barely started my standard greeting when an angry man interrupted me, yelling that our driver had tried to run them off the road. I tried to be diplomatic, suggesting that perhaps they had been in the vehicle's blind spot, pointing out the warning signs on our delivery vans about this issue. His wife, who I'll call Karen, immediately jumped in with racist implications about our driver's background and their wage level. The angry man continued to accuse our driver of attempted murder, becoming more aggressive with each word. I attempted to calm them both down, explaining that I was just trying to understand the situation. The angry man responded with threats, boasting about his supposed influence and threatening to shut down our operation. He demanded compensation and threatened legal action. Karen then tried a different approach, suggesting they might let this all go if we agreed to cater their upcoming party for free. The audacity of their attempted extortion left me momentarily speechless. The angry man took my silence as an opportunity to question my English comprehension skills with racist undertones. I responded by asking if they were driving the gold crossover with a license plate I had on record. The man aggressively asked if I was the van driver, to which I explained that no, I wasn't, but our driver had already reported their brake checking incident. He tried to justify their actions by claiming they were trying to stop a dangerous driver. When I mentioned reviewing our vehicle's 360-degree camera footage, the man insisted such technology didn't exist. I pulled up the footage from our fleet management software, which clearly showed their entire dangerous maneuver. I described to them exactly what I was watching: Karen speeding up when our driver signaled, their attempt to push through despite being in the blind spot, their dangerous overtaking maneuver, and the final brake check. I suggested that involving the police would be appropriate given the evidence. Karen tried to interrupt my description, but I continued. As I finished laying out the evidence, she could only sputter incoherently while her husband frantically told her to hang up the phone. They quickly disconnected the call. I wasn't about to let this end there. I immediately sent the footage to our legal team and filed a police report. A few weeks later, I learned that not only did they receive multiple citations for reckless driving and attempted insurance fraud, but their insurance company dropped them entirely after reviewing our footage. Apparently, this wasn't their first attempt at such a scam, just their first time targeting a vehicle with such comprehensive camera coverage. They had been trying to get free catering for their daughter's wedding. After their insurance company dropped them, they had to downgrade their wedding plans significantly. I heard that they ended up having to do a potluck reception at a community center instead of the luxury venue they'd been planning. I'm a 33-year-old woman who received a terminal diagnosis earlier this year, the same genetic condition that took my father when I was 12. The doctors say I have maybe 2 years before my cognitive abilities start to decline significantly. My family situation is complicated. My biological parents never married, and after my father passed away, his wealthy family set up a trust fund for me. My mother later married my stepfather, and they had my half-brother, who has severe mental disabilities. He functions at about a 7-year-old level, despite being 26 now. Money was always a sore subject. My mother and stepfather struggled financially with my brother's care, while I had this trust fund they couldn't touch. They tried everything to gain control of it when I was younger, even attempting legal action, but my grandparents had made it ironclad. My mother started viewing me as her personal emergency fund. Whenever things got tough, she would call me with a sweet voice, telling me about how my brother needed new specialized equipment and reminding me how tight things were financially. I would usually respond by offering to help a little while, reminding her that the fund was meant for my future too. My stepfather would always be in the background scoffing and making bitter comments about how nice it must be to have everything handed to me while they struggled. These conversations happened so often that I started distancing myself. Instead, I built my own chosen family. My best friend became more of a sister to me, and her two kids became my beloved niece and nephew. They've been my real support system through everything, especially since my diagnosis. When I found out about my condition, I decided to try one last time with my mother. I hired a lawyer and a social worker to help arrange everything, making sure to appoint my father's sister as my medical and financial power of attorney. I thought Mom would appreciate being freed from that responsibility, given her situation with my brother. Last week, I invited her for coffee to discuss my arrangements. I started by explaining how I'd made sure she wouldn't have to handle any of my care or paperwork, acknowledging that she had her hands full with my brother. She thanked me, calling me thoughtful, but then mentioned she'd been wanting to talk about the future. When I asked what she meant, she revealed that she'd always assumed I would help take care of my brother after she was gone. She suggested using my inheritance to set up a care fund for him, adding that she would make sure he knew it was from his big sister. The way she said it, like it was already decided, made my blood boil. But I kept calm and told her I'd already made my arrangements, explaining that I was leaving my estate to my best friend's children for their college education. Her face changed instantly. She called me selfish, demanding to know how I could do this to my own brother, insisting that my best friend's children weren't even my real family. I tried explaining that they'd been more family to me than she had in years, describing how they were there for me through treatments and let me stay with them when I was sick. She interrupted me, yelling about how that's what real family was for, emphasizing that she was my mother and my brother was my blood. I confronted her about her absence when I first started showing symptoms and needed rides to appointments, pointing out that she only started being nice after the diagnosis. That's when I realized why she'd suddenly become so caring. My stepfather, who had been quiet until then, jumped in with a bitter comment about how I was just like my father, selfish and thinking I was better than everyone else. I stood up and gathered my things, telling them that my father had made sure I was taken care of, and now I was doing the same for the children I love. I made it clear that my decision was final and the papers were signed. My mother shouted that I would regret this, insisting they were my real family. I responded by telling her that real family doesn't see you as a bank account. Real family shows up and is there for the hard parts, not just when they need something. I left the cafe and blocked their numbers. Later that day, my mother sent flying monkeys, relatives, and family friends to guilt-trip me on social media. I made one final post stating that my best friend had held my hand through diagnosis, her children's hugs got me through bad days, and they were my family, ending the discussion there. My aunt, who is my power of attorney, called later to express how proud she was of me for standing my ground. My best friend's kids video called to show me their latest art projects, and I knew I'd made the right choice. Blood doesn't make a family. Love, support, and being there when it matters does. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.